Hey everybody, I'm Paul Nabil with Tech for Palestine. I'm the host for today's roundtable. With us today are Hind Nasser, Jack Cinnamon, Sid, and Bilal, and the subject today is Fighting the War Machine, Exposing the Military Supply Chain. Thanks everybody who will be joining us. We may want to give it a minute or two before people kind of start coming in. I can see that we're up to a few folks right now. But just to get started, we'll go around and just have everybody very briefly introduce yourself and tell us what organization you're working with. I will try to continually go around clockwise and counterclockwise. I'll do my best, but we'll see how. It's just so not everybody is always going first or something. We'll try and keep it egalitarian here. So Hind, we'll start with you. Just briefly introduce yourself and let us know what you're with.
Hello, I'm Hind Nasser. I'm with Tech for Palestine, and I submitted an idea, which is like a canine legal action, to expose the use of canine, which is the dogs, highly intelligent dogs, into a part of like abuse and torture for the Palestinian and the rape of course, and bring that to make the public aware of it.
Thank you. Jack, why don't you go next?
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. Big fan of Tech for Palestine. So my name is Jack Cinnamon. I am a researcher for Shadow World Investigations, and we research and investigate trying to expose grand-scale corruption, state capture, but mostly in the arms trade, and we deal with demilitarization as well. And I'm also a research coordinator at the Corruption Tracker, where we document an online database of arms deals that are kind of surrounded with a lot of allegations of corruption.
Perfect. Thank you. Sid, why don't you go next?
Hi, everyone. Thanks also for organizing the event. I'm Sid. I work with a group called the Global Energy Embargo for Palestine, which started in the aftermath of the current genocide and worked in Colombia with a bunch of other groups on the coal embargo that eventually came into place last year, which is now at fear of being revoked. And as part of that, I'm also a member of the No Harbour for Genocide campaign, which I'll be talking about today, which is a network of organizations and movements, including the Palestinian Youth Movement, which tries to look at what a maritime strategy to intervene in sort of the military industrial trade, including energy, might look like. And that's the work that we do. And I can talk more about it, but happy to be here. Thanks.
No problem. Perfect. Bilal, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bilal, and I'm a member of the Palestinian Youth Movement, an organization of Palestinians and Arabs in diaspora that are taking up what we believe and understand to be our role in confronting Zionism in the diaspora. I'm a researcher on our Mask Off Maersk campaign, a campaign that is demanding that one of the world's largest shipping companies end their transportation of military cargo to the Zionist entity, as well as our People's Embargo for Palestine campaign, a broader effort that aims to end the use of public infrastructure for the facilitation of genocide through targeted local campaigns. And I'm very excited to be with everyone here.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining us today. This is such a cool group of people. I'm really excited for the conversation we're going to have. This is roundtable style, so feel free to pipe up. You don't have to wait for me to, ask you a question. I'm just a moderator here for the conversation. As people are kind of doing some quick introductions, definitely, I'm curious to know what everybody's role is in terms of the organization that they're working with. In particular, so like for Bilal, for example, and a few other, like Jack, I believe, would you consider yourselves researchers? Sid, Hind, what kind of role do you see yourself in the kind of fighting the war machine, so we can kind of know like where you're coming from when we talk about kind of what others can do and those sorts of things. Jack, why don't you start, if that's okay?
Yeah, sure. So at Shadow World Investigations, we are split quite a bit between the different roles that we have, but I would definitely describe myself as an investigative researcher and not a journalist, only because we don't necessarily release a lot of media consistently. We kind of do deep dives and long form investigations. One of the biggest examples of that is our big project at the moment, which is a book that we've been working on that's actually out in November, called Making a Killing. And the subheading is How the West Profits from Slaughter in Gaza and Yemen. And it looks at a lot of kind of different machinations of the arms trade and all its different kind of sectors. And it kind of exposes how it's not just a kind of homogenous thing, but it involves all these kind of other different elements as well. And we also do a lot of kind of anti-corruption work. We have a history with work in actually repatriating a lot of millions in South Africa, for example. We have worked on specific corrupt arms deals, and we had a recent project in the UK, which was kind of labeled around Keir Starmer and about ending his kind of tenure because of all the kind of corrupt means that he used to get into power. So we do a lot of kind of deeper dive investigations rather than kind of media, consistent media output. So, yeah.
So is that essentially the and I've been informed anybody who is watching the stream can submit questions at any time in the chat as a comment, and we will have a Q&A at the end that we'll address it later. So please throw anything you have in the chat. We will take a look at it. It will be seen. Yeah, so it's very interesting. So you're investigative researcher, and your organization does basically based on that, and there's research reports that are then released, kind of targeting these various like oppressive situations. Fantastic. So I'm gonna go actual clockwise right now. So that's gonna be Bilal, then Sid, and then Hind. Same question for all of you, just kind of based around your role.
Yeah, I think the way I would like articulate my role is that I'm both a researcher and an organizer, and this really stems from an understanding that that we've developed as the PYM of how research should inform campaigns and inform action. So in understanding our role, the research is a critical component because it exposes complicity, it exposes lies that are often hidden, and I mean, Jack can talk about it from the corruption angle. Sid can talk about it from the transportation angle as well. Like, the arms industry is very intentionally opaque. You know, all of these deals are kept out of the public eye, and oftentimes, like, our politicians are lying to us. The companies are lying to us, whether it's Maersk lying during their annual shareholder meeting about their role in the F-35 program, or whether it's, British Foreign Secretary David Lammy saying they were shipping helmets and defensive things, whereas our research showed that they were shipping 100,000 bullets. So one part of it is the research, and it's a critical part. But what is equally, or if not more important, is the organizational aspect. How do you translate that research, that knowledge, that power, that leverage into action? And it's our ports, it's our highways, it's our airports. All of this is used to facilitate the genocide. So that's why it's critical that, like, from a grassroots angle, from a labor angle, like, all of these different sectors and people and society as a whole take up an active role. So just to say, like, it's both the research and the organizing.
Yeah, it's always an interesting conversation when someone's like, it's important to this, but this is at least as or more important. It's like they're all important, but it is true that it is all going towards action, and if the action step doesn't happen, then it's yeah, something has maybe broken down in the work. Completely agree. And Sid, you're up next. We are here. You mentioned Mask Off Maersk, which I'm sure is adjacent to your work. But yeah, go ahead.
I mean, let me start by No Harbour for Genocide, and then I can come to what I do within it. So at the moment, No Harbour for Genocide is a network that's loosely held, or a number of network groups hold together the network of No Harbour for Genocide. So the Palestinian Youth Movement is one, the BDS National Committee is another one, and then we have sort of smaller groups who do research or have sort of embeddedness in certain contexts, whether that's Turkey or Brazil or South America, or Colombia or South Africa. And these groups have sort of come together to try and do what Bilal was saying, which is that the skills of critical research, the organizing capacity, and the political and social context that they bring, it allows for the network to have those inputs come in, which means that in different contexts, there's different realms of expertise coming in, and it allows for a maritime strategy to be much wider than it could be if it was just one group doing it. And so as a result of that, for example, the military supply chain is not just everything that Bilal has spoken about, which is containerized trade, so components of arms and arms components sort of going in containers, but it's also things like military grade steel, which find their way on sort of different kinds of ships, or it's energy commodities that could be sort of crude oil, it could be jet fuel, it could be coal, which work on a completely different kind of ship. And so it allows us to have that. And what I do within No Harbour for Genocide is I used to be a seafarer, and I had 15 years of working experience at sea. So I sort of try and contribute to what does it mean to look at different kinds of ships, different kinds of ports, and try and put it into a context where it becomes or is able to be more actionable, and where it allows for us to sort of speak to a wider network of people. That could be workers, so we do work with workers. It could also be sort of with movements. And that's why the collaborations help, because it stops the overlap from happening. And as I said, it brings in expertise. So yeah, that's a little bit of what I do and what the network does as well. So
cool. I think it's just so fascinating to hear of, because the fighting the war machine it's one of those things that just sounds impossible. Like it just sounds like an ant punching towards the sun, because it's just such this big, huge thing, and people don't realize most people would like to fight the war machine. And so like whatever network people set up to try and make this kind of decentralized thing happen on this massive scale, it's just awesome. And so first I want to point out on a few of the flyers, Hind's name has 2 I's, 2 N's. That is a misspelling. Her name is 1 I and 2 N's. So I just want to point that out here. And also, as Sid did, Hind, people might not be as familiar with No Harbour for Genocide. Same with, kind of your early stage of this work towards K9 legal action. So feel free to kind of talk a little more about what that means in this context, and then also talk about yourself to whatever capacity you want to.
Okay, thank you very much. Kind of like the K9 legal action came from first was like when I saw, like, you saw on social media that the report of the Palestinians starting to talk about them being raped by dogs. I mean, we know about the dogs being used to kill a teenage child who was with Down syndrome. That we know about. We know it's attacked an elderly woman. She was in Gaza in a house, and then the dog viciously attacked her, and it's recorded actually. It's all on the IDF recording, and they were happy to release that. So we know that. But then, kind of to come to the next level of when I first heard about like the rape, to be honest with you, I could not believe it until I came a post by a Palestinian activist, Janan Matari, and then she was talking about how actually canine dogs been used to rape, and it's like that's a historical content. And she was talking about a documentary recorded by the CIA, and that's happened in Argentina, for example, like I think in the 50s. And that's when that kind of resonate for me. It's kind of like it's not an even thing that just happened. That is a part of a war machine, as you said. So that's been like and then the question for me is resonate as an Iraqi person, like, so did the American use that on the Iraqis in Abu Ghraib, in their prison, in their camps, and if you read any documentary or books about the prisoners in Guantanamo Bay, and you know, so kind of it's quite an established tool, let we say. But then the fact is, it's kind of the one thing which is really I struggled with is people look into, especially here in the UK, when you come, is the dog is the most beloved pet for everybody else. So it's we don't talk about, like, it's not like abuse towards Palestinian or Palestinian pet. You know, probably you're blind, you don't want to look through that and extend your empathy to them. But then when you look, this is actually your pet, and you're using it to do that. So that's the thing I always struggled with, and always this is the, for me, is the West hypocrisy. And we're kind and we love everybody and kind and all of that. I wouldn't kill a spider, but then you wouldn't extend that empathy to the Palestinian. Okay, so let's not talk about dogs and not the Palestinian dogs. You know, let's talk about your dogs. You know. And so I submitted the idea to Tech for Palestine. They were happy with it. Although kind of for me is like, let's go more into who do the training, because surely there's someone is training. It's a business by the end of the day. And who's doing the training, who's and the selling. And canine are a very expensive dog to be sold and bought. Through my research, I looked into, there was a case into, it's the Netherlands is the main supplier for these dogs to Israel. And then after that, because they are used to abuse the Palestinian, I think they started to only sell puppies to Israel, not the adult trained dog. And for me, like, everything goes to the heart of everything is BDS, and how do you do the BDS? And hence it's a business. So it's selling dogs to Israel. That should be like, you know, if you're gonna sell canine dogs to Israel, that bear in mind that is the end destination to them. Probably they will be doing trained to do. And then, so that's one way going in BDS. The other one is selling them. So as for people, because families probably would want to buy them, but then do you want really to buy a dog been trained to rape if you have children and elders lying around? No, of course you don't. So that's kind of, again, to put a two-way BDS into that. And the first thing we need to do is the awareness for people around and make them aware of it, and to see what they think about. It's just the awareness, you know, and it's especially for the non-engaged person, really. You know.
I do, yeah, absolutely.
So that is where
that absolutely. And
so that's where the project came from. And sorry, go ahead.
No problem. Sorry if I stuttered. There was just a little bit of glitchiness there. That's a fantastic answer, and I really think that I'm just so glad that you're here, because it's. I mean, everybody's answers were already so global, and it's just a testament to how much the question of Palestine, as it's so often referred to, is just inextricable from just all these forms of like war and oppression and stuff all over the world. It's very kind of Palestine laboratory, you know. It's in the lineage of like South African apartheid and South American, you know, like Jakarta methods, whatever, all those things, this all kind of very interconnected. And you already sort of touched on several points as well, which is like kind of what can we do about it? I mean, BDS, obviously, boycott, divestment, sanctions is one of the most immediate and direct things that people can take part in, kind of at like the average consumer level. And it's really interesting to point out that, at some level, most likely, there are probably places where people might look to try to get a dog or something like that would also be complicit in the genocide, in Israel's genocide of Palestinians. So that's a great point.
To that, and to add into that, for example, and kind of like just have a deep think about that. At some point, these dogs will get retired because, as any canine, it's kind of like you have a service year which you're active in, and then after that you get into retired. So just let me know who will take that kind of dog at retirement in their homes.
Who wants a dog that's done that in the past?
As I said,
absolutely.
Yeah, so kind of so also like one of the things is like, which is like one of the things which is we learned through the social media is, for example, there are some organizations who were smuggling donkeys out of Gaza because they were inhumanely treated. So okay, what about the dogs? Would you smuggle them out? The canine dogs who are trying to do that, would you smuggle them out? It's a question for them who done that. And in terms of the donkeys who've been mistreated, so kind of the question is, who's mistreating them? Who's not letting food in to eat for them to be fed and for their welfare? That is also a question for whoever who participate in that campaign. That's a question for them to answer. Completely.
I think I'm going to go back around in the other direction now. So Sid, then Bilal, then Jack, and I think Hind has kind of transitioned us into a great follow-up space, which is I'm curious about kind of, first of all, just like the things that you've discovered in your work but I also kind of want to know, like not just your findings, but I mean just like methods. Like how does BDS like tie into your work that you do? Do you see that as some sort of effective thing? Work is that kind of very low level stuff, and there's other things you can do? Have you found more effective methods? What has worked in your own work? So for like Sid, for example, like have you seen things that do and don't work in the context of trying to block a shipment or something like that? Just kind of the general like findings, what works, what doesn't, those kinds of things. Sid, why don't you go ahead?
I mean, I think the answer is still to be found, but what I can do is reflect briefly on where we started and where we are. And I think there's two things that have gone on for a long time, right? Like they've happened in the context of Rhodesia, South African apartheid, and they've also happened for the Palestinian cause. One is that from the workers' side, we've had dock worker mobilizations, whether that's the Pacific Longshoremen unions or Genoese CALP and unions over there blocking shipments. There's been multiple sort of examples of this over the last 2-3 decades. And then you've also had the Block the Boat campaigns, which sort of targeted Zim primarily, which is the Israeli shipping company, and these were BDS actions. And I guess once new research started emerging, and I would say the research that is done is actually something that counter maps capital stools to sort of intervene against it. And so this era of globalization, of trade, of finance has actually opened up the doors to have access to data sets that are not complete, that are not meant to be for organizing, but they do allow you to put together a map. And so I think the methods that are used is to use that data to put together a map. That could be trade databases, it could be shipping data, it could be sort of commercial ship movement data, combine that with satellite imagery. There's a bunch of tools that come together that have been used in a lot of other contexts as well. That gives you a map. And then what you have to do is to give depth to that map, right? And that's where groups like movement groups come in handy, labor unions come in handy, because they understand the political context within which they're operating. And so I think the method only gets validated when you have depth to the map, which is to add on to what is going to be possible. And I think that is an evolving situation. I think we always felt like blocking ships was the way to go, and it remains one of the most direct actions that dock workers can take. But just the amount of shipments that go to Israel, it's physically impossible for one, the obscurity that Bilal spoke about, like not everything is transparent and known. Most of it is in hindsight. And the second thing is, how do you sort of keep up with the amounts of shipments that are going on a daily basis, just because of the sort of fragmented, globalized production of the military industrial complex. So it's little parts from across the world getting put onto different ships and then getting to Israel. And so I think then you take a step back and you're like, okay, there's two things that we need to do. And I think one is coordination. And so coordinations of movements with workers, coordinations of workers across different ports. And so the dock workers have now formed a coalition, for example, called the Dock Workers Do Not Work for War Coalition. And this is in 5 countries in the Med and the Adriatic regions. And it has 35 ports. They've done a big strike in February. They're doing another one in October. And that sort of momentum is growing. And that means that when sort of ships try to bypass blockades, there's multiple workers organizing in different places. That the research feeds a strategy like that to be able to pick up patterns and what has historically been movements. And it helps with that. And the second kind of thing that happens is also across sectors. And so, a Brazilian oil worker wanting Lula to enforce an oil embargo sort of runs into capital rerouting through a refinery in the Mediterranean, and then needs to reach out to workers over there to be able to figure out what a cross-geographical sort of strategy looks like. And these are sort of strategies that capital has used to keep workers divided. And so again, research shows the map, but the organizing work and the method is putting those connections together, and really the painstaking, slow process of putting together what has been different. And so the oil workers in these two contexts are essentially competing with each other for capital to accumulate. And it means inverting that and sort of building labor solidarity to invert capital, and ultimately the liberation of Palestine and sort of the devastation it leaves across from extraction to end use. And so I think that's where the method has sort of evolved, to look at the larger structures and find where we can rely on them not disappearing. A ship is highly mobile. It's a great target to try and get, but it's very mobile. But an insurance company located in the United Kingdom at the heart of colonial sort of mercantile capitalism is still there. And so what does it then mean to go and target insurance companies in the UK, which is a far more concentrated and effective strategy than it would be chasing ships? And it also then connects to workers trying to fight the war machine. So those are some of the sort of directions in which methods also evolve, because the more we understand, the more we then have to look for new methods to try and do research and the new ways to communicate that. So it's sort of in that way evolving. I don't think we have a fixed answer yet.
I mean, that's such a fundamental view into just what is the nature of resistance. You know what I mean? It's like you can do these highly visible actions like blocking a boat or something, but then you can go do something that almost sounds kind of boring, which is like targeting an insurance company, and just with that one act shut down so many more boats in a less visible. It's just it also do you find it's very labor union oriented work that you do, or is that are you describing sort of that'll always be important obviously, but are you almost describing moving away from that a little bit? How is that changing with that research?
I mean, I will say that there might be 3 layers of research, and this depends on what we are trying to communicate. Now, obviously, if I was to give a shipment by shipment port breakdown to the general public, it is extremely technical and something that people aren't necessarily going to be actioning. But giving a map of how the world supply chains of military industrial goods is sort of done, and that people can populate and sort of make their own, that's one level of sort of high level research. Then you get to movements, because we've realized that, dock workers in the ports and people on the streets, it's a powerful coalition to organize. But that requires, again, this understanding of what your ports are used for, what your cities are used for, and the tools that say, okay, is the mayor more effective here? What kind of sort of berth are we talking about where the ship might go to? And then there's the layer of the dock workers, which require a really deep understanding of what's happening with shipping companies, because then they can link that to logistic hubs or railway hubs that are, running in and out, where union wings might have other members, try and look at sort of those kind of cross-sectoral strategies in their context. And so I think the research takes these 3 layers as well of who we are communicating to. And so, yes, with the Dock Workers Do Not Work for War Coalition, we have an understanding that No Harbour for Genocide will produce research that aids the coalition. The exact demands of it also keep changing because workers also want to move in different directions. But yeah, that's the general sense, sort of divided up. It's the same day research, but put out in different formats for different layers of what needs to be done.
Absolutely. Absolutely fascinating. Thank you for that. Bilal, how you feeling?
Yeah, I could. I'll start off with talking about the methods. I mean, Sid touched on a lot of these, but essentially our research comes from various, open data sources like publicly available data. And in particular, like it's very specialized towards like our area of intervention, which is logistics. It's an understanding that, a weapons company isn't going to stop making weapons, but a company that transports groceries and clothes and like produce all over the world, like its stake in the transport of military cargo is significantly less. So because of that, we utilize, for example, documentation like bills of lading, the documents that companies have to fill out to say like we're shipping X product from this destination to this destination, or the air equivalent of that, the airway bill, like similar things. So in addition to actually tracking the vessel or the flight, there's like tracking and looking at the documentation around the goods and supplementing that importantly with, open source information. So number one, looking at like government contracts to understand the nature of these goods. One thing that I recommend people do is read some of our reports that are available on our websites, either at massgolfmaersk.com or embargoforpalestine.com. And there you can see all of our reports like explain how we come to these conclusions. And just to give an example of government contracts being significant, in our first report around the role of Maersk in the transportation of over 2,000 shipments of military cargo going to the government of Israel's Ministry of Defense, we found in a government contract that all of these shipments, all of these foreign military sales, again, this thing that feels so abstract, so far away, these contracts signed in Congress that like basically push forward the war machine. All the contracts specified that the transportation would be handled by a warehouse in New Jersey. So, I mean, looking at that, if you imagine how many people are in New York and they don't know that a warehouse like less than an hour away in the city of New Jersey is sending 1,000 tons every week of military cargo, including tank parts, including jet parts, including ammunition. So that's an important aspect of it as well. And like in addition to that, what really gives the significance to this information are the sacrifices of the people in Gaza to document the genocide. And this is an effort that's extremely important, especially nowadays, like the people who document fragments of bombs that are left in Gaza, the work of so many people to document what it takes to make the genocide possible. That is what really gives significance to the information. Now, I would say, moving on to our findings, like I said, oftentimes we're uncovering lies. That's not an interesting finding. I mean, how many of us 3 years into a genocide need to be told that politicians are lying about their role in it? But what I will say is that I think the most interesting things and the most relevant to our organizing is that, number one, it is so close to home. The war machine is so close to home. And number two, that we really can and we really have been able to shift it. I already mentioned the warehouse in New Jersey, but in May of 2025, we uncovered a shipment that was going out of JFK with 14 tons of nitrocellulose. And just to say, nitrocellulose it's basically gunpowder. So this like explosive shipment, these dangerous goods, 14 tons of it were flying out of a civilian airport, not a military airport, not an air base, and going, imagine it taking off on a runway right next to your like flight, you and your family going out to vacation, and right next to you is a gigantic shipment of gunpowder going to Elbit. So it is so close to home. the Oakland airport is a similar case, and we have a active campaign, demanding that the airport stop the transportation of F-35 components that leave the airport almost on a weekly basis on a FedEx flight to go supply the genocide and directly go to the Nevatim Air Base where Israel houses its entire F-35 fleet. So if you imagine these jets that are that recorded record amounts of flight time, they constantly need maintenance. And what facilitates that is the Oakland airport that, again, people use to fly across the US, fly to vacation. And it's similar. And to touch on the global aspect, that supply chain that implicates the Oakland airport includes FedEx flights that transfer through the Charles de Gaulle airport in France. So, over there, our partners at Urgence Palestine have been, pushing forward a campaign in coordination with labor unions and have actually filed a legal complaint against the airport for their role in this transportation and their complicity in genocide. So that's to say, it is so close to home. And finally, if you would allow me, we really have been able to impact these routes. I think maybe the most spectacular case, the one that's very flashy, is the fact that after this first Maersk report, the Spanish government actually denied 2 vessels from docking. But beyond that, worker action in France has led to the blocking of a shipment of 1 million ammunition links. And it led to Maersk actually just entirely dropping the route after they dropped the port of Fos-sur-Mer from their route because to them it's not worth it. The Oshkosh vehicles, which we have seen used to abduct Palestinians and take them to torture camps like Sde Teman, where they are subjected to abuse, like Hind was discussing before, and horrific torture. That used to be shipped on Maersk vessels, but we've seen in recent cases that some of these have gone in secret on vessels that turned off their trackers in the Mediterranean and completely hidden from the public eye, delivered these goods. And so many examples. I mean, a Belgian shipment of aircraft components, of actuators from the UK, was blocked by the Belgian authorities and seized after we informed them. So really, I mean, there are so many avenues that we can intervene in this through legal means, through grassroots pressure, because it is so close to home. And I think that's the most shocking revelation and the most interesting.
Yeah, of course. I was going to cut you off before. I was just going to comment that it feels so resonant when you talk about, flying out next to a plane, next to a 747 full of explosives, because I feel like every year our airports get less reliable anyway. So trust in general, commercial airports is eroding more and more every single year. So that just feels more terrifying every time you try and book another flight that gets delayed 8 hours for some reason. Very, very resonant for sure. And those are amazing examples. And I mean, if nothing else, I think we've seen a whole lot of shifts where, aside from the actual direct impact that it has on the ground in Palestine, certainly we've seen one company after the next have to kind of go underground with their support of the war machine, trying to hide it, whereas before they could be, much more brazen about it, and it would not invite nearly as much public scrutiny. And that's a very concrete result that we've seen out of a lot of this work, like Mask Off Maersk, et cetera. Awesome. And we're gonna go Jack, and then Hind. I'll give you another chance to talk after Jack, since now everybody's keep it even. But yeah, Jack, go ahead.
Yeah, just talking further on what Bilal was saying about making really concrete action. Shadow World Investigations worked with PYM and Bilal on TNT production in Poland, and TNT production was actually going on in Bydgoszcz, one town known for its manufacturing. But it was actually out of an old Nazi factory, and they were basically producing TNT there. State-owned company called Nitrochem. And after we released that report, there was tens of thousands of people on the streets marching in Warsaw, and it's led to a criminal complaint now. So you can make some concrete actions, 100%, and PYM have completely done that. And so in terms of on like a research level, in terms of the tools, we are very kind of collaborative, and I think that's one of the positives that's come out of kind of the research of what's been going on in Gaza, Yemen, Palestine, etc. I think that a lot more people are interested in these topics, and so there's a lot more campaigns. There's a lot more activists that are willing to collaborate as well, and a lot more new information, because you never really know what people's backgrounds are, or where they come from, what they know. So you can't really just assume to know it all. I think, especially in a community with our cause, I think working together is the most important thing we can do. But also working with journalists and whistleblowers. There's so much data out there in terms of open source, and it really requires a lot of patience and sifting through huge amounts of data, which can get tedious. But I think the results are definitely worth it if there's a potential for making some sort of action. But also looking through like financial data. I mean, especially at Shadow World Investigations, we look at a lot of individuals, especially like executives and AI and tech luminaries. So it's really important to kind of stay on top of like the financial data, how much they're earning compared to the workers, for example, because in the arms trade, it's not the workers working in the factories that are really profiting. It's the people on top. And so, I mean, even for one example, executive of, actually CEO of General Dynamics, Phoebe Novakovic, she has a net worth of $420 million. Meanwhile, her bombs are being used to eradicate people in Gaza and Yemen alike. And yeah, she's sold off $150 million worth of shares in the last 4 years. And made $270 million since 2021. So, I mean, these people are really raking it in. And, the top 10 AI and tech luminaries in the world now have a wealth of over $3 trillion. And that isn't even money that's, can be imagined. It's like, there's only 6 countries in the world where the GDP is greater than that figure, and that's higher than the whole value of the global military expenditure for 2025 as well. And so,
crazy.
Yeah, crazy. And so, I mean, even looking at, as Bilal was talking about, financial data and government reports and contracts, FOIs, which, are becoming increasingly authoritarian now. I mean, secrecy levels are just, it's really difficult to get information out of the government now. But also in terms of tracking software and things like that, and geolocation. So there's a lot of different ways that these tools can be used to carry out research. But I think one of the things that, one of the findings, I think, from writing this book with my co-authors at Shadow World Investigations, 5 people wrote this book, which wasn't easy because getting 5 people to write a single text is quite difficult. But in terms of the book, I think one of the shocking things is, and I think actually a positive again from the research coming out of trying to dismantle the arms trade at the moment is, I mean, in the past when one thought of the arms trade, it was very like simplistic. It was more like war dogs, or like it was kind of basically the movement of an AK-47 across the borders of Africa or something like that. It's very global South issue and things like that. But, I think one of the positives now is that, we now see how vast the arms trade is and how so many sectors are tied into that. So, I mean, even though, you know, of course, you have the biggest arms companies in the world. You have Lockheed Martin and RTX and, you know, BAE Systems or whoever, German, Rheinmetall. You know, but you also have, you know, the mining companies, the points of extraction. You know, you have the production of TNT, as we talked about. But you have, you know, logistics firms, the asset managers, tech firms, banks, pension funds, insurance companies, consultancy and auditing firms, think tanks, the lobbyists, the mercenaries, the middlemen, the military personnel, and more. You know, I had to read that because there'd be no way that I can remember that off the top of my head. So, I mean, and the money that comes out of those different sectors contributing to this trade and this destruction and devastation is not even calculable. You know, it's impossible to put those kind of funds together. And I think one of the positives is the fact that we now can actually dismantle the arms trade through all of these sectors. You know, so depending on where you have the most expertise, you know, even being a local citizen, now you know that you can target the pension funds, for example. You know, you have the power in that. Or, you know, as Sid does such great work, is, you know, the ports and on logistics, and so it kind of depends on where you lie within the global community, but everybody can do something, you know, and so yeah, it's good that we now kind of have that vast array of the arms trade to our knowledge.
Absolutely, and I really think that. We could probably talk about this for like another hour, but we are during Hind. I wanted to just take it to you, and then probably after your thoughts, we'll start looking at some questions. Theoretically, this will end in 15 minutes, but I think we'll probably get a little bit more time to go over, just so we can make sure that we get to as many questions as we can before they cut us off. But Hind, go ahead and share if you have any thoughts about what everyone's been saying here.
Yeah, kind of that. There's lots of things you can do as your individual level. So kind of one of the things is kind of talking about insurance companies and all of that. All of these kind of things, they took money from your pension, for example. So if anyone who we have working age, you have pension, I would encourage you to go and talk with who manage your pension and say to them, I just want, because this is my personal experience. So one of the things I did, it's kind of, I think it's 2018, 19. That's when I was seeking an action and advice, into what can I do if I don't want my pension to be invested in military sector. And so going through so many advices and you know, one leads to another. And the one thing you could do is when you talk with them and say, I don't want my money to be invested in military or production and all of that. And you could, the thing you could choose is to have an ethical investment into your pension, at least. That is on a personal level. That's a little thing you can do. And sometimes you come across someone who's resistant. And for example, the first answer I got myself is do it yourself. So which means that's person. But then I do think encouraging that conversation and to transfer and make, and because the people who are working in these offices, I don't think it's I'm not sure if they know. They definitely know, you know, but then just to make them aware of that, and maybe that will help. You know, too many questions for the same person maybe will sit and think with themselves, okay, this is, people don't like it and don't want it. And I also remember early on there was a podcast which I was listening to, which it was mainly for military production, and the person been asked, and the question been asked to that person to but then like if do you brand yourself an ESG, which is like ethical? So, and because like if you need more money, can you brand yourself an ESG investments? And so people say you can get more. And the guy was very clear. No, this is who we are. We're not going to do that. We don't do ESG. So at least the one who's in the manufacturing production of weapons, they know where they stand. And at least if we can do every penny every little we can take away from them, from the money exposed to their disposal. I think that's a helpful thing that we could do. So on a personal level, and in terms of awareness, and talking with everybody around you and raise awareness, I think that's important.
Absolutely agree. And yeah, it's interesting just in the context of your Tech for Palestine tying to, because you could imagine an initiative where it's like you start with, you know, canine units and like animal cruelty, and through that you could then also say, you know, like you actually couldn't divest entirely from military investments or whatever in your pension, and but like have a dog like as the, you know, the banner image for trying to do that.
I mean, even the latest thing, which is yesterday I read an article in the Cradle, and they're talking about using crocodile to put them around prisons in Palestine so they don't run away. You know, I mean, and that's and one the article they say is they're looking into. They changed the law and kind of like from protective to protective species into a pet. I think they changed. I haven't understood that part into what they changed the law in Israel, but then what does that mean? But then what's mean is they can use them to be put around the prison in the trenches. But then again, like to do that, you need vets, and they were saying they were going around zoos for a consultation. So that's another thing into if you're an animal lover and wild or not, but is that acceptable for you? You know, to put these animals into to be used in that way.
For sure, and we always call out the. It's always we always have to call out how, you know, I don't know what the right word is, maybe just annoying that you have to like try and get to Palestinians' humanity by way of people caring about, you know, animals, but it is, you know, it's an effective strategy and we should be utilizing it for sure. I think it's time for us to start answering questions. I think the best way might just be for me to kind of I see that Bilal, you said there's one in particular that you might want to get to. From Kate to Bilal, is there a place to find data on pieces of ordnance that have been found on the ground in Gaza?
Yeah, I'll be brief so that we can get to other questions. There are a lot of fantastic resources. The one that I think has been most helpful to us, and it's been cited in our reports, is the open source munitions portal. This is an NGO. You can find them online at osmp.ngo.
Is that going to be related also to like list of civilian airports complicit in aid and genocide? That's a question from Amir.
With that question, I think that's like I don't know that there are like other sources. I would point people maybe to one of our reports. The report about the Oakland airport actually documents several airports that are involved in the F-35 supply chain. So these include, you know, like Memphis, Tennessee, some in Texas and Oklahoma, I think Stockton, California. Like there's various areas. So I mean, I would recommend that people check out our report on the Oakland like People's Arms Embargo on our website at Embargo for Palestine.
Very nice. I think the next question I'll read is from Hamza, and I'll just leave it open to the table. With legal opposition like Canada's Combating Hate Act or the US's NSPM 7/Antifa conference, how can campaigns and organizations navigate the mission of researching, organizing, and affecting change?
I can answer that, I guess. So I think in terms of combating these certain sectors, there's a lot of different kind of routes that you know have proved successful to a certain degree. I think one of them, especially because a lot of our work revolves around kind of export control laws and things like this and licensing, we've kind of come to the conclusion that those laws kind of actually support the arms trade, because it can just be interpreted this, a certain way. But still, legal challenges are really effective as well. So, I mean, if you are able to get into a coalition with legal entities, you can basically start strategic litigation procedures, and they're not going to be successful necessarily, but they will kind of warn the government into actually sticking to the laws, or exposing more information, for example. And then there's a lot of examples of where strategic litigation has been successful. But then there's also a lot of divestment opportunities, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, as Sid has been talking about as well. There's a lot of kind of different avenues of that and how to apply that, especially to the different sectors that you're talking about. And then obviously there's a lot of direct action as well when all those kind of things fail. And direct action doesn't necessarily have to be where you go and get arrested, for example, if that's not something that you want to do. But it's basically if we use this quote in the book, but if there is for example, a mayor that's not providing you with water, direct action is not going outside of the mayor's house if he owns the water company, because that won't work. So it's about basically building the well yourself for the community, and so basically as you would do yourself anyway if you wanted water. So there's a lot of kind of different ways of kind of combating these sectors that make up the arms trade, and you kind of just have to see which ones are accessible in those times, and if not, then talk to whoever might be helpful.
Yeah, I think join a coalition and talk to someone is probably the most direct advice that anybody can give. That's always the start. It's like they say, you can go to a march or a rally, and that's a good thing to do, to just put your body out there and be visible. But when you're at the rally, what you really should be doing is looking for some coalition or organization that you resonate with, and then talking to them and getting more deeply involved. I see a question that we sort of touched on, but it also brings up something that we didn't, which is it's a question from Aaron, how to combat the neo-colonial theft for the kind of Western conception of the reconstruction of Gaza, which is interesting. Does anyone have any thoughts about that? Maybe Sid or Hind, if you want to take a question, or someone else.
The reconstruction, I don't think it's kind of like they are not reconstructing. They are they are making it into literally a ghetto on Rafah. That's what they are building, kind of now.
Yeah, I think reconstruction could probably be in quotation marks.
No, because I think it's everybody's saying there's not even money in the pot to do anything. No, all these donors, they didn't donate anything, and the only thing they are doing is probably building a ghetto at Rafah, and probably to make it a controlled zone. Actually, that's what it is, isn't it? I mean that's what I know. So,
Jack, if you want to chime in.
Go on.
So I think one. Sorry, can you hear me? So I think one example of, in our book also we talk about various odious characters, and, Tony Blair has been one of these characters that's been lurking around way too long. And, there was a Chilcot inquiry after the illegal invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq. And basically there was 4 primary aims of the invasion. But there were secondary aims as well. And the first secondary aim was to make sure that British and American companies made sure that they basically secured reconstruction contracts. And this is something that's going to be happening again. Tony Blair used to be in charge of peace efforts after he left office. I think it basically happened straight after. He visited Israel over 200 times, and he visited Palestine twice. He's doing the same thing now. He's now on the executive board of the Board of Peace. And I mean, he basically, he has a lot of connections through his dealings with BAE Systems and the arms trade anyway, with kind of authoritarian governments. So he's sitting in the exact position that he wanted, and he had, and through those connections as he was in office in the UK. So it's a huge issue, and I think a lot of these characters have been around too long, and it's time to make sure that they are not in positions of power anymore.
If I could add one thing, I mean, this is definitely like a huge question that needs to be explored, especially with a lot of the uncertainty on the ground. But to like add a little bit about some of these corporations that are profiting, there was an article that came out in The Guardian about a company called Gotham's LLC, based in Austin, Texas, which was actually trying to it had a draft plan with the so-called Board of Peace to like essentially have a monopoly on every truck entering and exiting Gaza. And this plan would give it a guaranteed 300% profits. So, I mean, when it came out, it was a draft plan, but just to say, like, even the role of logistics continues with this. But it is something that we see already, and it's something that we will have to answer to, like, as a movement.
Absolutely. We'll probably need to end here, but before we actually cut it off, I just want to have everybody kind of go around and sign off, and definitely shout out any projects you're working on, if where people can reach you, if you would like that, or resources, or a book coming out that you would like to shout out. I'm gonna go clockwise, and we're gonna start with Sid.
Thanks, Paul. Really interesting discussion. It was great to sort of hear everybody's view, and the questions coming in as well. There's so much to still talk about. I think the hour is too short. But I mean, I think what everyone was saying, I just want to add to it. I live in India, so I haven't been able to reply to some of the American context questions. But I do want to say is that in doing this research, there's two things that have happened. One is that once you start understanding, and even merely just Googling, like, one doesn't have to go too deep as well. But I think this sort of confluence of public life and public infrastructure with the military-industrial complex is so visible once you start looking, that just taking an anti-militarist lens at everything just opens up so many doors of what we have to do ahead. It is a politicizing process to just start even doing some research. And the second thing is, I want to echo Paul. In India, the father of the Indian Constitution, Baba Sahib Ambedkar, who led an anti-caste struggle for a long time, had this slogan, which was educate, agitate, organize. And I think we need all three of them, which is that we've been alienated into also feeling it's us against the system. But I think, like, when we organize, that threat also diminishes to some extent. And it's very important that we also find hope in comrades and in people who are around us to be able to build out what's ahead, because it's increasingly becoming hard to sit with the imagery and the news and the information alone and feel like you're increasingly failing. And so I don't know whether we'll win. I know we will win. I don't know when we'll win. But I think just the process of doing what we do is in itself hope-giving on an everyday basis. And we know it gives hope to the people of Palestine and Gaza, because we see that, their struggle is the one that none of us are even close to. I mean, what's happening there. And so I think just as a way to get by, I think it's really important that we keep doing this and make sort of militarism really central to climate, to energy, to household bills, to sort of consumption bills, energy costs, all of that. It's absolutely central today.
Thank you so much, Hind.
Yeah, well, if anybody would like to reach out, or if with information, or would you like to volunteer and help, please get in touch with Tech for Palestine. And if you have like a framework that work with other things, and you would think that would be maybe useful for K9 legal action, we could do that. We could do with some help. And thank you for inviting me to this podcast or meeting.
Absolutely. Yeah, so anybody who is interested in reaching out to Hind on that, Tech for Palestine, we have social media, and also you can go to the website and find other ways to reach out, like join the Discord, things like that. And you can talk to someone directly if you'd like to join in with that. Thank you so much, Hind. Jack, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for everything. It's been a pleasure to share on the panel with these great people doing such good work. And yeah, just so our book is coming out in November called Making a Killing: How the West Profits from Slaughter in Gaza and Yemen. It's taken 3 years to make. I think it's been really important work because we've made a lot of coalitions in the meantime, done a lot of projects in between, and worked with a lot of groups both in Yemen and Palestine. And yeah, we basically just hope that a lot of accountability can come from the book as well. And we hope that it can be a kind of a tool for activists and campaigners and researchers and things like that. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Bilal.
Yeah, I mean, thank you. It's been a pleasure to be on this roundtable with all of these amazing people. I mean, to follow the People's Embargo for Palestine, you can find us on our website or on our social media, People's Embargo for Palestine. And just as a final note, in thinking about this question that we're all confronting of how do we fight the war machine, I think the question is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And in thinking about all of the ways that Zionism manifests, we see it in education, we see it in politics, we see it in the military industry. Our role is to isolate Zionism, however that manifests. I mean, Tech for Palestine does this for tech. There are so many sectoral organizations that do this. And in thinking about our role in isolating Zionism, I mean, I want to give a phrase. I mean, we're an Arab org, so I want to give a little Arabic lesson. The phrase is "Sidd thagrak," which means like fill the breach, and thagr refers to like a mountain pass. And if you imagine like troops stationed defending something, in our role fighting and defending Palestine, we need to figure out what are the gaps and how can I fill that? Whether it's filling the gap of exposing some of these shipments, whether it's filling the gap that exists around fighting for prisoners and advocating around the abuse of canines, whether it's a gap in our local organizing scene, we need to all find our thagr and fill it. Thank you, everyone. Amazing
note to end on. Thank you so much to all of you for being here and for sharing your experiences and wisdom. An hour is never long enough, but thank you for being here. We appreciate you, and thank you for everybody who attended, to watch and submitted questions. Go out and find your breach. Have a good one.